As a drummer, one dimension of musical theory that I am aware of is time signatures. And most rock beats are in 4/4 time. So,
yeah,
as you know,
yeah.
Yeah. And some beats just sound wrong to the ear. So I hate playing 5/4, for instance, when I see that.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3,
When
4,
I
5.
see it in a textbook. And I was wondering why you think that some of these patterns sound right naturally to the ears, but others don't.
Well, so there's two levels to the answer. One is the first thing that the infant hears in the womb is the heartbeat. So bump, 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 bump. So there's a 2 beat.
Oh, wow.
There's a space between the second one and the first one. And so if the circuits in your suprachiasmatic nucleus or your cerebellum are synchronizing to it, they're going to have to figure out what the blank interval is too. But the noised part of it is 2 beats. When we walk or march, that's 2, right? Marching. Hut, 2, 3, 4, hut, 2, 3, 4, right? When we swing, it has a natural 3 rhythm because as you reach the peak of the parabola and it hangs there before it comes down. So if you're swinging like in a hammock or in a swing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you get 3, you get waltz time out of that. But so the first part of the answer is there are these biological components. If you've ever run in what we would call a canter for a horse, where instead of running like a jogger or running like a sprinter, you lift off one foot and allow yourself to glide, and then you set down and you glide again. A canter, that's got a 1, 2, 3 feel to it, and that's an efficient way to run. So because you're launching rather than stepping each time. So these are biological givens, but the reality is there's a cultural overlay. Music is cultural. There was an ethnocentric view that persisted for many, many years that, if only we could go to the Ural Mountains or sub-Saharan Africa and play the Mozart, they would accede to the superiority of our music because of Mozart. And it turns out not to be true. Bill Thompson and Laura Lee Balkwill and others have done that experiment, and many times over. Western music is not superior. Mozart is not superior. And many cultures have polyrhythms where rhythms are playing against one another. There'll be rhythms of 7 or 11, and they'll have notes that don't line up with ours. And so the rhythms that feel right to you, Robinson, and to me are based on what we've been hearing most of our lives. And it's why to us, if you hear a xylophone doing a chromatic scale, bum, 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 you might be thinking of Bugs Bunny climbing stairs or something. But that's cultural. It's learned.
I expected that one part was going to be learned based on the music that you were exposed to. I wasn't expecting the heartbeats or the swings or marching. That's all very fascinating as well. But one thing that I thought that you might have mentioned, and this came up when I was speaking with Chomsky, was that there are certain languages, certain types of languages that the brain just inherently can't process. He called them impossible languages. And this is one of his issues with the large language models and why he thinks we can't learn much about human language from them because they have no problem with these quote unquote impossible languages. And I thought that what you might have said was not necessarily that there are impossible musical patterns or something that our brains can't process, but the way that our brains evolved, there are just some patterns of music that the brain doesn't like, maybe something like that.
Well, so if it is nothing else, the human brain is a giant prediction machine. It's trying to figure out what's going to happen next. It's evolutionarily adaptive to do that. And music is this wonderful game for the brain, because most music that we like, not all music, but most music has a steady beat. And so you pretty much know when the next event's going to happen. If you know exactly what it is, you're going to grow quickly bored of the music. So this would be a very boring song. Bum, 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 bum. But I can fix it. Bum, 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 ba da 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 dum, bum, 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 bum. Right? I kind of fixed it. Not the greatest song in the world, but I got your prediction device kind of engaged there. That's in Brodmann area 47, we think, on either side of the brain here. And just apropos what we were talking about earlier, I can't tell you what all the Brodmann areas do. I just know about a few of the ones that I study. But so there is music that I think the brain doesn't like, and that would be either music that is basically just that, completely as Claude Shannon would say, the information content is such that there's no information there at all. It's entirely predictable. And the other thing we wouldn't like is, one would predict, is 12-tone music, where there's no relationship across the notes. Serial music, computer-generated tones that, don't 12-tone music where we violate the tonal hierarchy and scales and things, and we just choose notes at random. There's no ability for the giant prediction device that is your brain to actually grab a hold of anything. And so for that reason, I think that members of our culture tend not to like music of the Cameroon Pygmies or Chinese opera, because those are working under different systems. And it's why the Cameroon Pygmies probably don't like Mozart or Taylor Swift very much.
Interesting. Yeah, I like this idea of the brain as a prediction machine. And it makes me wonder, though, why some surprises in music are experienced with enjoyment and some we really don't like them. And I noticed this in one song on your album, Sex and Math. The song was Headed for the Fall, in that there's a purposefully dissonant progression that repeats a number of times, and it's downward, so it kind of mimics falling in a sense, like in the title. But do you know what I'm referring to in the song?
Yeah, it's an A11 chord in the middle of all that, which is a dissonant chord to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah. But despite its dissonance, it totally adds positively to the song.
And it goes by quickly, right?
Yeah.
It's a dissonance in between two consonant B minor sevens. So I can demonstrate it for you.
This is a first for Robinson's podcast. That's a very beautiful guitar.
Thank you. My friend Tom Brousseau gave it to me as a gift. So the basic riff of the song is in a B minor 7. And it has two dissonant turnarounds in the verse. When I was a child, I never learned to swim. These are dissonant technically. They're augmented chords. This one kind of fits the key, because if I went like this, I'm sorry, it kind of resolves. But going here, that's jarring.
Right.
And then on the way down where it's falling, I got to get from here to here. down, down, down as I start to lose it. Down, 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 down as I start to lose it all. And so the way I actually play it is down, down, down. And I think you're hearing this.
Yeah.
And it's in passing. So, and you're right. It for me, after the fact, it evoked in my head this idea that you're not just falling, but you're tumbling against rocks or something. I mean, there's some,
Yeah.
but it goes by quick enough that hopefully it doesn't upset you too much. It's just, but it's surprising.
Right, right. No, I noticed it, and it was surprising, but I liked it. And that's what I was wondering about. If you have any idea why it is that this dissonance is pleasing as opposed to some other dissonances.
Well, I've had a wonderful experience in the last few years playing with Victor Wooten, a friend of mine who's a bass player, and we performed together as a duo. We've toured, and in Victor's mind, there is no dissonance. You can play anything you want, but it's the context. And this goes back to an old concept I had forgotten from Leonard Bernstein's Norton lectures at Harvard in the 70s. Dissonance is contextual. You can get away with a lot depending on what's happening in the song, how you got there, and how you get out of it. So if you listen to some of the jazz players, they'll make mistakes. And some players, like McCoy Tyner, after they make a mistake, they'll go fix it. Other players like Miles, they play a note that sounds wrong or that maybe they didn't even intend. They'll just hit it over and over and over and over again until they've normalized it, right? But in the so that's really the context of soloing. But in the context of a song, generally you're trying to get from here to here. The song is a journey, and you normally begin and end on the same chord a lot of the time. And so everybody knows you're going to end on the same chord. The question is, how are you going to get there? And are you going to get there in an interesting way? And you'll tolerate a whole lot of dissonance, it turns out, if there's a rhythm going. That's where you as a drummer understand that. If you can keep the beat going, and like if you were in the band with me and we were playing that tune, the worst thing you could do would be to like stop your beat and let that oddball chord hang out there like a matzo ball. Or, if you were to just like crash your cymbals with it, the better thing to do is regularize it and just let it, go along with the flow, which you would probably do, being a sensitive drummer.
Yeah. Well, this is also an example, though, when as an artist, you're knowingly making a mistake, but it's to achieve a very targeted effect. Like in this case, to emulate falling on rocks, which might like tumbling off of these rocks. And it might superficially make the song less tasty in the sugar or fatty sense, but it's very complex. It makes it complex. And we could carry this sugary, fatty metaphor farther. I mean, if you're going to a 5-star restaurant, they're not just going to serve you Toll House chocolate chip cookies. They're going to be giving you something that's very interesting. Like if you're going to a 5-star sushi place in New York City, they're not giving you Neapolitan style pizza, which to me is like the tastiest food, but they're giving you seaweed and 5 different types of sea urchin, because they're not just going for the sweets. They're trying to make something complex and sophisticated and tell a story.
That's a nice analogy. I have to say, in this song, in all my songs, there's nothing intentional in the writing or performing of them where I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to use this chord because it sounds like tumbling off rocks. It's only after the fact, when you asked me about it just now, that I realized, oh, well, that's the effect that it has. For me, as you said at the beginning of our time together, it just comes from intuition and me try to express myself and let things happen. And I remember working a long time trying to find that chord, not knowing what it meant or why I wanted it. As I said, I knew I needed to get from here to here. They're the same chord, but different voicings. And I knew it needed to go, it needed to stop somewhere along the way. And it was just painstakingly that I figured out, it was not this, but this. That just, and I can't tell you where it came from other than just fumbling. And that's one of the things I learned from Joni about writing, is that writing is an act of discovery. From Joni Mitchell, that you play around with different things. In this case, I had something vague in my head, and it was through the act of playing that I found something that was allowed me to solidify that vague notion as something concrete. And the same happens when after I run an experiment, I'm trying to write it up. I have some vague notion about how I want to express it, and then the act of writing the words and get out what's in my head onto paper, and then it comes staring back in the paper, and I go, well, that's not what I meant, or that is what I meant, but it's not the right way to say it.